Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be doing a follow-up video to another I did fairly recently. That video was, how could Gerudo Desert change in Breath of the Wild 2? So, today I'll be discussing how Lanayru province could change in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. I'll discuss how the Zora could change and any other things, such as geographical changes. If you enjoy Zelda content, then please do consider subscribing for weekly Zelda content. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. Lanayru province is one of the many staples seen in the Zelda series. It's one of those places that I don't think we'll ever see truly go away, along with the likes of the Goron settlements, the Gerudo villages, and the Koroks, or, otherwise known Kakiris. This is because, just like the other areas I just mentioned, Lanayru province houses one of Hyrule's most prominent races over the ages, the Zoras. And while in the adult timeline split, these Zoras are seen to evolve into what we know in Wind Waker to be the Rito, so the question of the video begs, how exactly could we see Lanayru province changed in the newest Zelda game? And, well, this question is significantly harder to answer than most of the other races. This is mostly down to the fact that the Zora have always just kinda done the same thing. Let me elaborate. Back where we first see the Zoras in action, namely in the Ocarina of Time, they all live in caves and we really don't see them too much. But, I mean, sure, they have a king, sure they have other basic necessities seen in the game, but really they're just fish people that live in a giant cave seen within a mountain and that occasionally go out swimming in Lake Hylia. Skip forward to the end of the timeline. What do we see? A generation of fish-like people roaming a giant structure that can only be explained as stunning, eye-wateringly beautiful. A real feat of building in comparison to that little cave that they settled in. So, with all of this in mind, what do I think is going to happen to the Zora race and more importantly the Lanayru section of the map when Breath of the Wild 2 releases? Enough circling around the point, it's time to discuss it. The first option that I think is worth exploring and possibly the darkest option in terms of the Zora race themselves would be the possibility that the Zora race as a whole could in fact be eliminated for the next game. Now, this does sound very far-fetched, especially at first glance. I mean, come on, this isn't a Telltale game, this is a Nintendo game, but I feel that this is still a plausible outcome worth talking about. We all know by now that Breath of the Wild incorporated races that should otherwise never be seen in the same world living alongside each other. In fact, there's one pair in particular that comes to mind when discussing that, and that is the Rito and Zora races. If you're not aware, the reason why Zoras aren't seen in the likes of the Wind Waker is because the Zoras evolved into those that we now know as the Rito. So, realistically, and in an ideal universe, the Rito and Zora should never meet, no matter the events of time. There shouldn't be de-evolution. So my theory is that we could see the game actually place itself in a split in the timeline, meaning that all Zoras could die out due to Ganondorf or perhaps just down to natural causes. Now this theory is both dark and far-fetched, but I prefer to talk about every possibility I can even think about on my channel, and that has a slim but real chance of happening, though I do think that the Zelda team strays too far away from story for my liking for this. So then, the next possibility I'd like to discuss is possibly the most boring one out of the three that I've lined up. This is that the Zoras actually do the same thing that they've been doing in the Zelda timeline for the last 20 or so years. They'll just evolve again. And while I don't think that it can rival the likes of Zora's domain seen in Breath of the Wild, I'm sure that the Zelda team can find a way. In fact, let's talk about small ways that I think Zora's domain could be fixed for the better. First of all, I think that the Zoras could extend Zora's domain. I mean, around the world of Breath of the Wild, you'll run into an absurd amount of Zoras. Never mind just the base amount of Zoras you see walking around the narrow paths of the domain itself. In fact, why could the Zoras not take a leaf out of the older generation's books? Around Zora's domain in Breath of the Wild, I would say there is plenty of area to dig into, some mountains, and, to lie some beds down so that the Zoras can finally get some good sleep. Or, if they sleep in water, then why not just lie down in a more cozy lake area, seen in the likes of the bottom of the Zora's domain seen in Breath of the Wild? Personally speaking, I think that I'd love to see this extension of Zora's domain, but I'd actually like to see them branch out of Lanayru province and closer to the likes of Lake Hylia itself, because I don't know about you, but I would hate to be part of the Zora race and have to swim all the way down the river to get to the biggest lake in all of Hyrule, especially considering your ancestors literally had a tunnel that used to funnel out all of the swimming. Imagine the Zoras having a mini village suited for only 10 Zoras so that it can swim around the lake whenever they want. This would serve as a sort of holiday destination for the Zoras, I guess. Anyway, in general, I think that the idea of the Zoras evolving further is one that I'm almost certain we will see expanded upon in Breath of the Wild 2. So then, time for my final theory discussing what could happen to Lanayru Province in this widely anticipated sequel. I discuss this in almost every video, and I would like to make a habit of it. If we see the hero and Princess of Wilds going back in time in the next game, then we could see a slightly devolved version of what we saw in the first game. For example, we could see the slightly less constructed Zora's domain, with Zora's hard at work using luminous stones to craft the beautiful scenery seen in the first game. Characters such as Sidon and others could be seen grieving over the loss of the Zora champion Mipha, and just as some Zoras did in the first game, some may retaliate over the fact that Link even dare have the nerve to appear in the Lanayru region. In fact, let's talk about the Lanayru region as a whole, if old buildings are brought back due to the hero going back in time. Well, that's about all to discuss, I guess. In my opinion, I wouldn't say that there are any notable buildings that are really seen destroyed in Breath of the Wild's Lanayru province, so there's not much to speculate on in that regard. So I guess that's all my theories on what I would think could happen to the Lanayru section of the map in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. As just a quick side note, I would like to say that seeing the Zora's reaction finding out that the Rito birds are evolutions of them would actually be hilarious. I feel as if many Zoras would get very defensive over the race, so that would be funny to see in game if the Zelda team have any intentions of giving us the option to at least figure that out for them. But with that said, let's move out to the outro. Thank you so much for watching. I would have made this video slightly longer, but I had another one planned for this week, so I got to work making this video a lot later than usual. Rest assured my video plan for this week is now planned for next week. So please follow my social media accounts seen on screen right now and in the description if you have the time and would like to see some of my daily activities. In fact, on my pinned tweet you'll see an invite to my Discord server. Please do join if you want to talk to people who are interested in Zelda, including myself. I also have a Patreon now, so please do consider donating to me there if you'd like to support me financially. For the record, I'd appreciate it more than anything in the world. With all of that stuff out of the way, please do leave a like rating if you enjoyed this video or agree with any theories that I had. And if you want to see more weekly Zelda content from yours truly, then please consider subscribing as it helps me out a ridiculous amount. I hope you have an amazing week, stay safe, and I'll see you all next week.